Okay, I'm going to call to order the Okeechobee Utility Authority meeting of April 12th, 2021. I get everybody to please stand and join me to the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God bless America.
Work on the determination of voting members, taking roll. Ms. Anderson?
Present.
Mr. Clay?
Here.
Jeff Fadley is out. Mr. Moldenhauer is out. Mr. Nelson?
Present.
Ms. Trent?
Here.
Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Everybody's voting today. Okay, we have two sets of minutes that we need to approve. I think we're first going to take the minutes of February 8th, 2021. It's the board's pleasure.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes from our February meeting, February 8th, 2021.
Motion by Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second, Mr. Clay. Further discussion?
Whoops.
Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is carried.
In a hurry.
Now we will,
I make a motion that we accept the minutes from our March 8th, 2021 meeting. Second.
motion Mr. Clay, Mr. Nelson, second Mr. Clay. Any further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 4, our consent agenda.
Motion that we accept is written.
Motion to accept by Mr. Clay,
Second.
second Mr. Nelson. Any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we're going to scoot all the way down on the new agenda to item 15, which in the old agenda was 12. But on your computer, it'll be agenda item 12, but it's 15 on the sheet. We're going to start with the presentation of the fiscal year 2020 financial statement, audit report, governance letter, and annual finance report. Mr. Morton?
You can go right up here.
Good morning.
Morning, and thank you for inviting me here to go over your audit with you. I'll be brief since it's a very good audit. I'll hit some highlights and then open it up to any questions you might have. And it is the annual financial audit, and the first thing in there is our opinion, and it is a modified, we call it the complete opinion, which is always good. There really were no new accounting standards issued this year or next year that really is going to affect the statements. most of the country, there's unfunded liabilities, which someone's gonna have to pay for in the future. That's good management, that you don't have that problem going forward. And one other new thing this year is your state funding, you got over $750,000 from the state that's subject to what's called the state sync audit. And so what that requires us to do is we have to do additional internal control testing, and we have to give an opinion on your compliance with that program. So we did give a clean opinion on compliance, you had to comply with all requirements, and we didn't have any reportable items in internal control with it. I think they're doing a pretty good job of keeping track of all the grant requirements and making sure that they're being followed. And then the only other reports we issue in here is the Auditor General requires us to issue management letter, and he has like 7 or 8 items that we're required to cover there, and there were no comments or concerns there. And then we also ought to issue a letter where we test your investment policy, and again, there were no exceptions there. So I would just like that, thank George and Janet and everyone for their assistance in making this a very smooth and productive audit.
Good.
And I just open up if anyone has any questions.
No.
Good news.
Yeah,
Good news is best left right where it is.
I don't have a question, but I do want to thank Mr. Hayford and especially George and Janet for the job that you all do. It takes a lot of time and hard work and effort, so thank you so much.
Well said.
Yes.
Yeah. If you look at how this thing's going, I mean, 2025, we're going to be down $10 million in debt,
Yes.
and that's phenomenal.
Yes, it is.
You know, it wasn't that long ago, we were close to 50. So,
I can tell you from a banker's standpoint of view, you are definitely folks that we would love to lend to. So good job.
Well, thank you very much.
Back to that 50 million.
There you go.
yeah. About one good project, get us close.
Mr. Morton, thank you very much. We
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you.
your hard work.
Yes.
I guess we need the board to accept the audit report.
I'll make a motion to accept the audit report as presented.
Motion by Ms. Trent.
Second.
Mr. Clayson. Nelson.
So who gets second?
Let's go
I'll
with
take second. I'm the younger one.
the prettier one.
I said younger.
Younger, okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do we have anything else to approve? No matter, just the report itself.
We also need to approve the annual financial report, which is just a summary of the consolidated
Okay,
revenues.
so we need to approve the annual financial report.
I'll make that motion.
Motion, Ms. Trent.
Second.
Second, Mr. Clay. Beat him that time. Further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 16, which will be capital connection charge. John, you want to open, or you want Mr. Hamilton to take it?
We'll open it up, and then Murray Hamilton is here, and certainly George can throw in his opinions and ideas on the capital connection charges. But this is a follow-up of our February presentation. Some of this material you see in here is a redo of the February material, and there is some background information here taken out of our current resolution, establishes the overall policies and procedures of the OUA. There's a discussion there on what a equivalent residential connection charge is, which is what we do, the basis for all capital connection charges. It's the intended flow for that new connection, whether residential, non-residential, mass meter, is set at 250 gallons per day. And so that establishes what one ERC is. One ERC is one capital connection charge, again, whether it's water or wastewater. Establishing our rates, fees, and charges, which we do periodically during the year. That's established by the board. And then what cap connection charges essentially are, in that they are generally applied against capital expenditures in the system, whether that is treatment plants, storage tanks, pump stations, whatever those capital expansions are, that these fees are pledged as revenue against those expenses. As y'all may be aware, the current water and wastewater residential and non-residential capital connection budget around 30,000, and last year we recovered about 127,000 in capital connection charges. But again, when you compare those capital connection charges, whether budgetary or actual, to our annual debt service of $2.4 million, it's not a significant amount. It is something, but it's not significant. Or other fees and charges that we collect end up paying for that $2.4 million. And to that end, I can only tell you, Mr. Irby is not going to be here this morning. The king is going to be here to talk about some of the impacts of what those capital connection charges mean to new business development. Murray Hamilton is here to talk to you about how we established our current fees for capital connection charges, and then from a rate development and rate forecasting perspective, what those capital connection charges mean to the OUA, and then historically or generally what our capital connection charges and how are they arrived at. So if you have any questions of me, I'll be glad to answer them. Otherwise, Murray will go with his presentation.
Any questions, John? Mr. Hamilton, welcome.
Thank you. Morning.
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 Technology, we'll see if we get it up on the screen.
Yeah, I'm watching it right here.
Good morning. Mr. Chair, members of the board, again, for the record, my name is Murray Hamilton. I'm a senior manager at Leftalis. We're a utility rate and financial consulting firm with our Florida office located just north of Orlando in Maitland, Florida. Both myself and Henry Thomas, who you've met with in the past, have had the privilege of working with OUA for a number of years. Myself, for the last almost 16 years now, since 2005. Again, primarily providing supportive rate calculations and annual financial forecast analysis. You know, as Mr. Hayford pointed out, my understanding is that at least locally, the board and staff have been discussing policies related to the imposition of capital connection charges, as well as accrued guaranteed revenue charges. Today, I plan to provide an overview of the industry practices and to provide some historical perspective on how OUA has recouped its expansion-related costs from new development as new capacity requirements come on board. I think what, at least what my primary goal here today is to have a conversation about, you know, the recoupment, the use of the fees, how we want those policies to look like going forward. Our firm is right now under contract to possibly update the level of capital connection charge fee. So we're kind of interested in terms of if that's a path that we want to go down. In addition, we're also under contract to update your financial forecast to look at the evaluation of your monthly user rates over the next 5 years. And so obviously, depending on what your perspective is and what scenarios you might want us to consider over the next several months as we put those studies together. This is our kickoff meeting, in other words. You know, before getting into some of the issues, I think a real good place to start is a few questions. I just wanted to address some of the issues right off the bat, and at the end of the presentation, I would like to just open it up to discussion, because I'm sure there's some questions that you might have that I address in this presentation document. But more specifically, you know, what are the capital connection charges? The last detailed study that was prepared that supported the implementation of the fees concluded in 2009. We're going to talk about how fees were established and what costs they're meant to recover. We're also going to talk about how much of OUA's investment in those facilities were allocated and reserved for the benefit of new capacity, new growth, if you will. Over time, since the completion of the study report, how much has the OUA collected in capital connection charge revenues? And what portion of the investment that OUA has extended to new growth, how much have we not collected at this point in time? And then lastly, what do we do with the funds? And I think, personally, presentation itself provides a pretty good story in terms of the overall planning of the facility needs. A principal driver in establishing capital connection charges really focuses around concurrency planning. We've got the Community Planning Act that provides for comprehensive planning for local governments, for a guide to manage future development in order to preserve, promote, protect, and improve public health and safety and comfort. Consistent with safeguarding public health and safety, sanitary sewer, adequate water supplies, and potable water facilities need to be in place concurrent with new development. So either in advance of new development or once new development is planning to impact the system, those facilities have to be in place. And this isn't just limited to water and sewer. Transportation is the same way. The school district, municipal services, police, fire, libraries, other general government. So all growth has an impact at every level of those planning requirements. Now, in water and wastewater business specifically, it's very capital intensive, as I know everybody knows here. It requires the investment in those facilities in advance of the growth and demand. And as such, utilities have universally implemented capacity fees, such as the capital connection charges, in order to recover those costs, the system capacity costs. And this is really an important concept. Now, Okeechobee Utility Authority has home rule. You have a lot of flexibility in terms of how you want to establish your rates, how you want to recover your costs. If we take this from a philosophical standpoint, dealing with a private utility, one that might be regulated by the Florida Public Service Commission, the PSC has a rule that we kind of term used and useful, and it looks at the utilization of the plant. And so what the PSC will do to a private investor, a private utility, is he can't just build plant, set a rate of return on it, and collect it from the customers. Through the used and useful rule, the PSC will actually limit the amount that they can charge their existing ratepayer. And so any excess capacity reserved for new customer growth, his only option there is to recover it through a capital connection charge or an accrued guaranteed revenue and/or an accrued guaranteed revenue charge. And so that's where a lot of the basis of your current fee structure really kind of falls from is the rules and regulations of the PSC.
I have a question,
Yes,
please. Going back to your Community Planning Act, how does that mirror, or are we utilizing that with the EDC for future growth for the community? How are we, I'm trying to understand how we might partner with like what EDC is doing as far as the future growth of the community.
Well, not specifically related to EDC. Your relationship directly is with Okeechobee County and the city of Okeechobee.
Right.
Okay, so Okeechobee County and the city of Okeechobee have adopted comprehensive plans
Right.
that specifically require the coordination with OUA to make sure that all the concurrency requirements are met. Now, how EDC interacts with those two localities in order to help facilitate planning, I don't know. Do you have a relationship, John?
The answer to that, I don't think we actually have a direct relation with EDC. It's sort of like they have to interact with both the city planning and county planning, and then we interact. So we're kind of co-equals
Okay.
in that we both have to interact with the planning departments who actually have the bulk of the say-so of who comes in and where they develop due to their planning documents, if that helps.
Okay.
Now, what I can tell you is that leading up to development, there is some interaction between ourselves and developers,
Okay.
knowing where water facilities are, where wastewater facilities are, what kind of capabilities do they need, so there is that interaction on the side between any development action, whether EDC and the OUA, outside of the city or county planning departments. Does that help?
It does. In my mind, I'm just trying to understand if we have a new business coming into Okeechobee, they go to the EDC, they explain to the EDC what it is that they're trying to do, at what point does the EDC and OUA come together to be able to help this interested party?
That might be a direct question to EDC because they are the ones, we have no clue as to who's coming in and looking at the property. So it's something within their interaction with the potential client and when we get involved. But we do, they're very quick to ask us for our help when it's time for us to help them. Now, what I can tell you is that when the city, way back when, was developing their industrial park, we were involved with the city early on about what are the demands needed, water, wastewater. And so in that whole park, when there wasn't really fires, we were involved from the other end of the aspect, preparing the park.
I just want to make sure that we as OUA are in the potential planning on a lot of these projects that are coming in, so.
Well, the one thing that's encouraging now is we have a face here.
Yes.
We, for years, we only had one person here, and it was from the Economic Council, which was Tara, and then I can't think of the young Tewksbury. Anyway, yeah, so that's been been pretty much the only people here. So it's encouraging that we do now have a voice. And you've been here pretty much since she's been coming, and I think you're new also, right? So we have, not that we have failed in that, but there's been a big gap between us and everybody else. It's kind of,
We need to all be part of the same.
yeah, it's
Yes.
trying to connect the dots, and she's doing that now. And again, you see there's no one represented here except for that one group now. The paper's not here, they quit coming 4 years ago, 5 years ago. So we don't have that group anymore. We don't have anybody, when we hear things, just like you come the other day about, I call it Fowler, I can't think of what New Air, Trek, whatever their name is out there. Had no clue. I got blindsided with a ton of phone calls afterwards, and had to go into detail and try to explain what I remembered about this. But so there's a break in communication. And I'm just going to be sarcastic here, but it's like we all got our little place and we keep it covered up. The county got their little place in the city, and we're over here, and everybody's hiding their marbles. And unfortunately, that's the way it looks. I try to have an open communication with anybody that asks me anything, but we don't have that voice out there, and we're starting to get things back from this young lady here. So it's not been
Transparent.
yeah, it's not been as like we would like for it to be. We've tried, we've had meetings, and we're gonna have monthly meetings, and then it all falls apart. The follow-through between everybody, city, county, us, and everything kind of seems to, once we have a couple, then you can't get everybody back on the same page. Me and you tried it.
I tried it.
You
several
tried it. So
months,
we've all had that where we're gonna meet.
and we were the ones pushing it.
You will meet at the city and meet, the mayor and the chairman of the commission, but
Well, it is in the interlocal agreement that we will, at periodic times, go to the city and help, but they don't come to us,
Right.
so.
out of courtesy, I represent everybody in Okeechobee, just like we all do, but I was appointed by the city, so I give Dowling courtesy calls.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure the olive branch is there. That's why where I'm going with this.
Yeah, it's
We're all-
there, but if you go back to the history but even before I was on here, these guys were forced, and I'm gonna say that publicly, you guys had a lot of pressure on you to build this thing. From commission, from real estate brokers, from, everybody to build this thing. So it's built, and there's 16,000 available hookups out there, and I read in here, we've got 30,000 and something available. So we built it and everybody run when the economy crashed. So we got another, we can do what, 25,000 hookups on water?
The capacity's definitely there.
Yeah, the capacity's
There's no
there.
question.
So with all these developers left, then there's no conduit. You know, you never see a builder in here unless he's mad because we did something wrong.
Well, it's the selling of Okeechobee, but I will say that, talking to Marcus recently, that the OUA and city utility department are working very nicely together. I don't know if you saw the new video regarding Okeechobee County, and I guess the advertisement was excellent. It was really good. But like you're saying, the left hand needs to know what the right hand is doing.
We have a lot of infrastructure in place, a lot more than I even know about, but it's, again, someone coming in, Jeff or somebody coming in, Steve Dobbs or whoever coming in and saying, hey, I'm looking, that's when we find out, hey, you know, when you got an engineer that's looking at putting in a project or doing something, that's kind of when we find it. So,
But yes, the line of communication is always open and we're receptive, but they've got to come to us.
Right, and if we're not available as a board, I mean, that goes back to John being available.
oh, believe me,
Almost
they-
just a phone call away.
Oh.
Available if the board's not, so.
they got our numbers.
Don't hide.
Yeah. But it could be better, and I think it will be better. Because the one thing we've asked of her is to keep us in the loop. We'll keep her in the loop. But like I told you before, you might not like what we say, but at least we all are on the same page.
And having this actual discussion today means a lot to me.
And it's driven by what her and Frank brought in here, is what's driving this. So,
Can we get back? Yes.
So just speaking about that existing infrastructure, the plants, excess capacity, obviously OUA has existing facilities that have expansion-related capacity that can serve new growth. And most recently, OUA financed the expansion of the water system. It was through the 2002 bonds, you know, from your auditor, he just mentioned. Y'all did a refunding last year. That's now incorporated into the 2020 B bonds, the BB&T loan. Also, OUA issued several SRF loans at the time. Those have subsequently been paid down, again, to finance the expansion of the wastewater system. You have implemented capital connection charges, and they're specifically related to the new user's contribution to the system costs to provide system. Now, what's included in the capital connection charge are the system costs specifically related to the supply, treatment, and the backbone transmission to serve the customer. And so by default, what's excluded from the fee is all the on-site and local infrastructure dealing with the water distribution system, the wastewater collection system, meter services, and minor equipment that are generally either contributed via the developer in the development or are funded separately. In addition, we further reduce those fees to take into account the value of historical grants that are received by the system. And again, it's our interpretation that those grants aren't only meant to benefit the existing customers of the system, but also the future customers as well. So it's a pro rata share. Slide 6, in your 5, I should say, in your packet, kind of shows what's included in the fee and what was ultimately allocated to future growth. So the existing and planned investments for the entire utility system, water, wastewater combined, were approximately $123.8 million, of which the reduction in those costs, which was about 55% of the overall investment, it was reduced by $68.1 million, which left $55.7 million in system costs. So again, this is the water, wastewater supply, treatment, backbone transmission. We then apportion those costs based on the utilization of the existing plant between existing and future customers of the system. And almost 70% of the total costs were reserved for future demands, $39.3 million. Working with Mr. Gall, we came up with an accountability subsequent to our last study over the last 12 years to determine what had been collected towards that investment. So $39 million allocated to future capacity capital connection charges. Again, based on the last study, that leaves roughly $33 million remaining to be collected as new capacity demands come onto the system. And of course, as I mentioned to you earlier, we'd like an opportunity to update what that value is, but based on the last assessment, we had roughly $33 million remaining to be collected as of the end of last fiscal year. Slide 7 provides a high-level summary of the sources and then the uses of those capital connection charges. Going into the period, existing customers paid their capital connection charges, and OUA had $5.4 million in the bank at the time. Again, over the 12-year period, you collected capital connection charge revenues. You also had investment income on those funds, $6.6 million over the 12-year period. Total sources was $12 million. This board in OUA used roughly 35% of those sources, $4.2 million, to directly fund expansion-related projects in the capital plan in order to facilitate new connections, new service needs. And then 53%, $6.4 million, was directly used to retire portions of your debt service. And so you may recall there was a large principal payment on I believe it was SRF number 2 at one point in time. SRF 3 was completely taken out. Right. And then even subsequent to that, there was another $2.9 million that was funded later to completely take out state revolving loan number 2. So what that means collectively is this body put forth $9.4 million in revenues that were predominantly provided through capital connection charges that existing customers paid on this system, by which lowering the annual debt service $822,000 a year. When we look at that, and it was all wastewater debt, and when you look at that implication on the typical residential bill, it lowered the overall cost $10.32 per month indefinitely. And what's not presented here is, Henry and I came back several times after we expanded the wastewater plant. We did a number of different financial forecasts. You might remember we had some pretty steep rate adjustments that were planned. I recall I believe we made a rate adjustment in 2011, but then we were able to avoid a rate adjustment for a number of years, specifically because of the use of these capital connection charge revenues in lowering that debt service payment. And so those forecasts didn't come into reality because, again, you had access to this resource. I'll point out that reduction in the overall bill, if you will, not only benefits our existing customers, but the next customer who connects to the system benefits from that lower rate because our existing customers, again, pay capital connection charges. We do have a capital connection charge comparison to share with you to show how your system compares to other utilities. It is important to note there's a lot of reasons why the rates and fees are different. Some of it deals directly with policy decisions, which this board may make as well. As Mr. Hayford mentioned, up to this point over the last few years, OUA has elected to discount the capital connection charges by 75%, as well as other development-related fees, meter installations, and those kinds of things. So source of supply is important. The proximity to that source, what kind of transmission system you have to put in place, availability of grant funding, life cycle, really important. Is it a mature community, where most of the investment was put in decades ago, and you're just recovering a historical cost, or are they a growing community where they're having to regularly put in more expensive, more current infrastructure? Age of the system also plays a role in some of these costs. And so on slide 10, we do have a comparison of your gross fee. That's the $4,763 per water and wastewater equivalent residential connection. That's to the modest right of the page, if you will. Your current policy to discount that charge is at the far left in the bottom left-hand corner, $1,191 again per equivalent residential connection, so 75% discount. When you look at the overall survey average, it's roughly $4,300 per connection. Mr. Gall wanted me to look at Boca Raton in a little bit more detail. They are an outlier, more $9,000 per water and wastewater connection. If you recalculate that average, it's closer to about $4,000. But nonetheless, even your current charge at $4,700 is well within those levels. And like I said, there's a number of different reasons why some of these fee amounts are different by jurisdiction. At least for the briefing document, and we'll open up to some more discussion here soon. Again, to the extent new development, expansion of demand, and redevelopment impose new demands on system capacity, modern capital funding practices support the use of capacity fees like capital connection charges to help ensure that growth pays its own way. As we demonstrated herein, OUA's collection and subsequent use of capital connection charges has reduced the burden on existing and I'll say future ratepayers associated with financing the cost of unused and excess capacity solely reserved for new development. Now, when considering some of the items that were presented in the agenda packet, whether to continue to discount the capital connection charge or even possibly waiving it, or the AGRC as well, I think it's important to at least acknowledge a couple points, and that is, one, inherently we're creating a competitive disadvantage for existing businesses. So we're lowering the cost to enter the market, if you will, of a new business who could subsequently compete with businesses that have been here for years and customers of this system. In addition, future customers have benefited and will benefit from monthly rates that are now lower because existing customers pay capital connection charges, while our existing customers, again, if we continue to discount or otherwise waive the fees altogether, the existing customers are forfeiting any benefit that would have been derived if we collected a capital connection charge for new growth. And as Mr. Hayward pointed out, look at the financial statements in terms of the annual revenues. This is more form over substance. Okay, so again, we're not collecting a large number of revenues today. I admit that. So again, it's more form over substance. But I think the idea is new growth should contribute something. The question is, at what level do you want to see that occur? Again, as pointed out, the capital connection charges were last formally reviewed in 2009. We're currently under contract to possibly reevaluate the level of those fees, certainly to reevaluate your financial forecast and the level of your monthly user rates. And again, my purpose today is really to get some feedback from the board. Do we want to the extent of reevaluating the investment, supply, treatment, transmission in the existing system? How much is a portion between existing and should be a portion to future? That would result, at least on paper, a change in the current fee structure. And then how do we want to implement those fees going forward? And with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to entertain any other questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have any
The question would be, how long could we go on without raising the fees?
Without raising the capital connection charge.
staying at
Well, again, as Mr. Hayford pointed out, in the budget process, it's a small piece of the annual revenues. Okay, the best example I could give you is exactly what this body did with revenues that were collected, granted over more than a decade, was to significantly reduce the annual debt service payments and directly fund capital. So to the extent you have to continue to make improvements in the system, which are pretty guaranteed, somebody's going to have to pay for that. Now, another point I'd like to make, again, in that budget document, we've got so much of capital connection charge revenues that we're collecting annually to go towards $2.4 million in annual debt service. That $2.4 million was $3.2 million. Then, again, until we reduce the debt service payment by the use of capital connection charges, it was a greater impact. I'm sorry, John.
And let me just try to add this to that question. The capital connection charges, keep in mind, is really a function of what we spend on capital system improvements. And considerable amount of debt. Right now, by our last estimate, it might be, those projects might leave us in the range of $4 million further in debt. That's what we would have to contemplate on adjusting our capital connection charges. So I think your question was, if I heard part of it, was when would we have to adjust our rates? That's gonna be a part of the further study that they're going to do, the rate forecasting in general, where do we have to go? So for capital connection charges, we haven't done that analysis in a lot of years, and I would suggest we should wait until we get through with these big capital projects that we have planned right now.
Right.
What's the impact to us financially, actual loan dollars? Then we go back and look at our capital connection charges to see where we can adjust them, if that helps.
Yeah, makes sense.
Well, another thing though, folks, is we gotta remember is the thing that saved us is the developer agreements, because we haven't had the growth. I mean, to sit here and say we had growth, we ain't had no growth.
And that's,
But are we prepared for the growth?
Yeah,
I guess
yeah,
that's
we
what-
are,
yes.
we're prepared for the
Question.
growth. By far, we're prepared for the growth. The monies, most of the monies he's talking about is stuff we got from rate developers who failed, and we ended up either suing them or ended up with their properties and all that, so. Great revenue source, but that's not there going forward. So what we have to look at is, I mean, when you look at this chart, I mean, we're equivalent to Clewiston and Sebring, Moorhaven, and then you jump to Bradenton, which has no correlation with us whatsoever. I don't see anything from Hardy County in here, but, we're on that, Wauchula and those kind of places, so, I mean, when you look, Village of Indiantown, you're not gonna collect, it's a little deal down there, but, Sebring, Moorhaven, and then the one that's really high is when you jump down to LaBelle, but it's in Lee County. So, again, I just think we have to look at it and realize where that money came from is through very smart planning from here, there, to get those developer agreements in place to be able to borrow the money. And then when they failed, we ended up with people paying us lump sums and us.
We had some money paid up front, and then others where they had pledged it against, their properties, and when they didn't pay us, we were able to buy their certificates again, something that we kind of created here, where we bought the certificates, and after time, we were able to go through the certification process to refund those certificates, and they ended up giving us.
And when you're saying we have to wait time, what was the time period on some of those?
It's a minimum of 2 years, but I think we waited more like 4 or 5 years, because we were not in a position where we had to have the money right away. So we had the property, in turn, leased it out with cattle leases, which meant we didn't.
Did really well.
have to have the property. And we're not in the cattle business yet. And so once we got to that point where we were looking at liquidating the property to put that money towards debt retirement, which helped us in the long term with lowering our annual debt service payment.
So that's where the majority of the funds came from, is the sale of property to do the debt lowering.
2 sources.
Two.
Capital.
That's what I wanna make sure I
connection charges
understand.
were paid by some of the developers up front, and that was a vast sum of money. Those that pledged a time payment plan, as part of their tax bill, when they didn't pay their tax bill, we bought the certificates after X number of years. Once the payments were all made, we then went to sell the tax certificates or acquire the land, and we ultimately acquired the land.
So the majority of the money did not come from the capital connection fees.
Yeah, on paper.
The capital connection fees were the basis for the developer's contribution.
Right.
The payments were for the capital connection charge.
Right, they bought the ERCs and stuff, but they never developed. So we ended up with 100 acres behind the Walpole Flea Market, 100 acres at Nubbin Slough, which we sold for 1.8, I think.
1.9.
1.9 million we got for both of them at public auction. So,
I'm just trying to understand.
right, that's my point though, is the capital connection fees have been great, but it hasn't been because of growth.
Right.
That's,
Exactly.
We
You
haven't
know,
had any
so-
significant growth in several years, but the mirror out here right now is with the southwest section, the Bass Pro, the Highway 78 corridor. We are gonna have some significant growth that we haven't seen in many years, so.
But we've been running along at 10 million, 10.2, 10.3, whatever it is on our annual, know what we've been making, and we're paying paying in 9. And we're spending 9 of the 10. Last year with 127,000 that we brought in on Capital Connection, which is out of a $10 million, so it's, and I understand where, I think I know where people's trying to go with this, because if you're up there at $5,000, it's hard to get a workforce. And John, me and you just had this discussion, so when you're trying to bring in a workforce at $50,000-$60,000 medians, which is high for Okeechobee anyway, I think we're at 30, what, 1, 2?
Little less.
31 or, you're right, but we're at 31 or 32. Right, so that's what we have to look at, is how do we continue this thing growing, but we also make it easy for people. I'm not worried too much about the business side of this. I'm more worried about the people that come here that can support the business. Right now, we don't have a workforce here to sustain anything. I mean, this pool is wiped out. I mean, there's very few, you run an ad on Indeed and see what you get for anything, so I think we have to.
Transient workforce. We want people that are gonna plant their seed
Exactly.
here and grow. And
Exactly,
to-
yes, and I'm not
But you're gonna
talking,
need a combination of both, though.
yeah,
You have to balance that, 'cause
Yeah.
if the jobs aren't here
Right.
for those people that are living in the better communities, the question that I've always asked when I'm out and about, what do you have in Okeechobee County that's gonna make my living better than where I am right now?
well, they're not gonna drive from the coast to here to work, very few.
Very few.
You know, you're gonna have some accountants and stuff like that and working for bigger companies here. Most of the time, it's from here to there. So we don't have there's no new oak parks. There's no, you know what I'm saying? So we need to have the ability to control this. And because I don't see a bunch more developments coming. I mean, there's some in town, I mean, there's one right over here that's all paid for if it goes in. So it's, yeah, I love the fact the money's coming in, but we gotta look at, all right, how do we entice these people to live here?
So, again, one of the questions I hope I addressed, because I see the argument periodically, especially when it comes to waiving the capital connection charge. And again, as a policy, as a practice of this board, I don't see that throughout the state of Florida. Every utility that I'm aware of has some form of capital connection charge. The new customers are required to pay at least some contribution. I had one client who did not have a water capital connection charge, and as of March 1st, they have one now. So even that one example I had in the entire state has now gone away. Acknowledging, though, you have the accrued guaranteed revenue charge, and I would tell you that's least comparable. I can only think of maybe 5 to 6 utilities statewide that have that fee. Again, it came predominantly from the investor utility side of the house, if you will, through the Public Service Commission. Again, it was, at the time that it was implemented, it was a policy to make sure that the developers were going to pay their fair share at 100% of the cost. So again, you have some flexibility about what you want this policy to look like in terms of the overall capital connection charge, whether you want to continue the AGRC, or whether you want to combine those two into one fee structure. Just keep in mind, there's still some administrative issues that are at hand. Your capital connection charge is generally restricted, and that goes into a separate fund. The AGRC is an operating revenue. So again, there's some administrative stuff that still has to happen behind the curtain, but I'm sure staff can accommodate this board.
We did, I she brought us a deal the other day, a guy, an existing business wanting to add on, and it was $130,000, which they're doing it. But that's what brought this up. They're an existing customer, they have lines in there, but to get to the new service that size they needed, it was gonna cost another $130,000. So, when this argument first started, I was like, well, no, they need to pay, but then well, they already are a customer. They already, you know, so we really gotta look at how to clean this up and make it right.
Well, again, a little bit on that, though, they were an existing customer, but they were expanding their business. So their demand
Exactly.
was gonna go up. So that demand element is like a new customer.
Right.
And so the debate was, where is the fair amount for an existing customer that already has a workforce, has an established business? If they wanted to expand their business, is it entirely fair to charge them the capital connection charges based solely on that expanded demand? And that's where I think we have.
That's what's driving this.
Well, the way I like to look at, you know, we've got the private utility, we have the co-ops, okay, and we have obviously the authority. In the co-op operates more closely akin to the authority than any private utility. So if you think about that, in the co-op, every customer is a member, right? And
Get a
so-
dividend
So your
check.
membership is your stock.
Yeah.
And so are you gonna allow a new member to take on more stock without a contribution to that equity? I think that answer would generally be no. And so, and you're not gonna give your stock away. So I think if you think of it from that type of a standpoint, again, the practices became, were deemed to be appropriate in order to help safeguard the existing customer.
We have to look at ourselves, though. We're not on a deep water port. We don't have a big airport. We got one main rail line through with just a few spurs. And there's nobody beating her door down to get in here. So we have to, as a community, to go back to what you said with the county, the city, and us, we have to sit down and figure out what's the best way to be attractive. And if, John, what would it cost them if they hadn't had a system? And our old, been 75% higher if we didn't have the reduction.
Higher than what we originally.
Yeah, it'd have been what?
It'd be 4 times higher.
Yeah, so, see, now you're at $500,000 for a guy to come out here and go into on a piece of property that he doesn't own. It belongs to the county, so we're not attractive. It's not attractive at all, so we have to figure out how to be attractive. And it's not just about the growth of this, it's about the growth of our community. You know, it's more, so how do we fit into that?
And I think we have done our due diligence in being attractive with the 75%.
We've done a good job.
The projects like that, John take on a case-by-case basis and goes and sits down and gives them some options and tries to work with them. Last thing we're trying to do is discourage anybody to come here, and I think we've really done our part as far as we can go to be as attractive. We might have to
Well,
start-
I mean, when you look at it, we were down at $21 million in debt. We made $127,000 last year on capital connection fees, which is, you know, on a $10 million, 127,000's 1%. Okay, so,
Did you say that was used for infrastructure repairs and stuff of that nature?
And clearly, let's also touch on this, if we look at it from the ratepayer's perspective, what this board is doing as far as the guidance and establishing the policies of reduced connection charges, payment plans where they can stretch it out over 10 years, essentially interest-free, I think we charge 1%. I mean, it's pretty manageable. The real benefactors here for most job expansions are gonna be other players like the city or the county. Because that workforce, or they bring in 10 new jobs, 50 new jobs, they're out there certainly within the community spending their paychecks, hopefully. So there's other businesses that benefit, taxes. So the way I kind of look at it is, if especially with groups like EDC, helping to collate and bring all that together. It's a multifaceted, multi-pronged approach to try to entice those businesses in, because there's a lot of other benefactors other than just the opioid.
Yeah, there is, and you made a good point. But again, we are 35 miles from the interstate. We're 35 miles from the turnpike. We are close to deep water ports, 100 miles. West Palm Beach is not a deep water. You know, your biggest international airport's Miami. You know, West Palm's got a airport, but it doesn't have a big international. There's the free zones and all those things. They're 100 miles from us. And so we have to look at what we can do to help our community, just like you said, just like everybody here said, the city, the county, and all
All the
to
players.
be enticing to that company that's gonna bring in 10 people. What-
50 or 100.
Well, you look at 50 or 100, we don't have the staff, there's not the people here to do that, or the housing. So we really have to look at reality, and reality is, we're a very small town, we're famous for our lake and our ranches and our dairies. That's what we're famous for. So we don't have, and again, me and John was just having this, because he just went through a deal at the college on it, the workforce. We don't have a workforce, guys, so to me, it's a whole global thing to look at. And yeah, well, I don't wanna take the position, I don't wanna do nothing until the county does or the city does. I think we need to lead.
Well, someone needs to take the lead.
Somebody needs to lead. So I'm through, I'm good. I got off my podium.
Next.
Anybody else need to vent?
You gotta care about
So-
your community, and we do.
Yes.
I think this is our first meeting of a few, obviously, to coordinate. And I don't know, well, I guess just from what you heard here is about the best direction we can give you. I don't think we're in a position right now to give you any, this is what we need to do.
I think John said it right, though. that We need to
Extend, see what's happening.
see what's happening out here with what we get done. I mean, you know, I've seen where Bass Pro's moving forward a little bit, so, all those things are gonna come to fruition.
$4 million deficit, that's gonna be definitely different than if we don't. You know, we're gonna have a lot of things to consider when these.
And it is somewhat dynamic, so it's
Sure.
gonna move.
It's gonna,
It's like this will be coming back to the board shortly, but we have no idea what USDA is doing. They're
Right.
extending us out, and it's like the carrot and the stick, and they keep, extending it out in front of us. We have not gotten to them to the point yet where they will obligate funds. And it's becoming challenging. So we will look at other aspects for loans, just because we can't get them to the plate. So we can't play ball if they're not ready, willing, and able to step up.
and another thing that we are going to be approaching the county commission on here in a couple of weeks is mandatory hookup, That's another revenue that we have to take into consideration here.
Well, now's the perfect time. Ain't nobody up for election for 2 years, so.
Well, they have an appointment.
They have an appointment.
Yeah,
That ain't gonna happen.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
The mandatory connection, obviously, where that plays in is, it's all well and good to talk about capital connection charges and money up front. But where we, George, Murray, myself, where we look at it is, it's the long term. You put in the infrastructure and you have the connection, because without the use, without the long-term financial obligations, we're gonna be at a situation where we have this expansion of the treatment plant, $23 million, and we have nobody connected and using it.
Yep.
And we still gotta pay for it.
And we've been doing that.
So what we don't wanna do is put in services for 500 connections over here and have
100.
100. Because I still have that annual operating cost to operate for 500, and it doesn't work that way.
And
How many
maintenance,
homes is over there? You told me.
730, I think, wasn't it?
Well, there's
Counting Oak
lots
Park?
that are like 700, but the last count, it was actual, we did somewhere around 500. So somewhere between 500 and 700 connections.
Now we're looking at that 78 corridor, which wasn't involved in that originally, was it? And there's
You pull all those
a couple of
package
dozen.
plants off and,
So
which
there's-
is, it's a lot of flow and you got that spike period too, you know, right now you'd be spiking and in summer it'd calm down a little bit unless Bass Pro really can ramp this thing up and
And that's a part of this mandatory connection, if you remember, we had, it's on the books, county development regulations, they just haven't.
But hopefully with the Bass Pro thing, I mean, they're gonna have this really nice deal down there, but if you shop like I do, you're gonna stay at Mayberry's right down the street and do the benefits of their place. I'm sorry.
Well, it's all about our pocketbooks, man.
So if, just for correction, that if we, for their planning purposes to move forward, the rates, fees, and charges would stay as we currently are operating at a 75% reduction until we get clearer indication of what the cost and expense are gonna be in the Southwest, and then they can go back and revisit.
I think it's the only way you can do it and get it accurate.
What's the timeline we're looking at here with the analysis that he's doing?
They're gonna go back and do the rate forecasting estimate. So it'll probably be sometime later this summer, midsummer, that they would be back with their rate forecast.
But if I'm understanding right, for the thing at the Southwest then, the capital connection charge, to the extent we update the fee level, the gross cost, that'll probably be sometime after the summer. Is that accurate?
Clearly, as we get further into the borrowing phase, and where we know.
Right.
Then we talk about, the analysis of the capital connection.
And what was the timing of that? I
We don't know
forgot.
that yet.
Okay, gotcha.
The USDA is, extended out, I think we're waiting on, we had to do a bat survey. Bat survey's done.
How many of them is there?
We're waiting on, a response from a tribal team that has to give us the blessing of which they don't operate on a fixed time schedule, so we just, it's.
Called island time.
My bat lives in another state now, don't count her.
It'll be brought back to the board shortly. We may elect to go another route on the funding, and, we'll just bring that back.
So in other words, I'm sorry. No, it depends on how much free money we get.
With our capital connection policy that this board set the 75% reduction, that doesn't sunset until, what, September? So we're kind of where we are until then. There's no provision, if I remember, in that to adjust that during.
Well, you could adjust it by board, but we'd have to have a public hearing, and then we could adjust
Okay,
it.
there's a provision there.
But right now, we're on
We're good
the
till
path where we're set through September 30th, which coincides obviously with our budget process that starts 1 October.
Call.
Murray, didn't you say we have to give 90-day notice if we want to make a change? Well, historically, we have been.
No, that's the firing.
Right, well, that, again.
Who are we firing?
We've elected to do a temporary discount.
Right.
You know, again, I'll leave the legal opinion here, but you're not adjusting the gross amount. So this, to me, the board electing to charge much less than what is justified, I don't see any legal ramification here. But yours is correct in the fact that if we move forward, we go through Southwest, and we decide we want to update the gross amount of capital connection charge, and to the extent the board elected to move forward with that, and it was a greater fee, it could go down. But let's just say it was a greater fee, you're correct, you'd have to provide at least a 90-day notice in order to.
Always a pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Very informative, thank you.
We do have an EPC, if you want to have a comment from the private sector as far as capital connection charges, she's here.
Yes, please, join us. Yes. Unless you're afraid of us.
So just to clarify, well, first, while we're up here, if you attended our
You wanted me to introduce you, Mr. Gall. This is Mr. Gall.
Anyways, I was really happy with the engagement that we had in that training. I know this is kind of off topic, but, I appreciate that. So I wanted to say that first. And second of all, if we're talking about specifically, if I'm just looking at the case that we just had, which kind of prompted this discussion. This was an existing business that's been in the community for 30 years. I'm gonna try not to speak on their behalf too much, but I think it helps when we're having these discussions to think a little bit in context. But when it comes to this specific event, this was their concerns. We're an existing business, we've been here for 30 years. We consider ourselves to employ, or probably be in the running of one of the top employers for the area. You know, they have 100+ employees. So that's, you know, a significant local impact as far as the community and jobs. So that was a concern. And we understand the 75% discount that was discussed, but they did move forward with the project, but they scaled it down based on what those fees were, and that was because of all the things we just discussed. It is hard to maintain a workforce in this area. It is, you know, we are looking at some significant challenges as a community when it comes to just having retention on what we already have. So when we're looking at these issues, we're looking at them from retention and at the same time from growth. So I just wanted to clarify that they did move forward with their project, but they had to change it and scale back. So just a thought, you know, when we're having these discussions. In my opinion, I feel like we worked really well with OUA on that. That was I'll say that was a challenge. Just working together, differences in opinions and
I think, I don't think the challenge was between you and OUA, if I understand correctly.
correct.
Yes.
But I feel like we came to a compromise, if you will, if that's the right term. But so that's where we're at with that one. So I did want to clarify that. But you know, when it comes to these kind of issues, you guys know well that we're looking at challenges for our community. We're looking at what we have and keeping those businesses that we have. But then we're also looking at what is wanting to look here. And I would say I've been here in November and we have worked with 5 to 6 potential, I mean, in my opinion, for what we have to offer, those were good prospects in my opinion. From the 5 to 6, I'll call them prospects, prospective businesses. They range from 5 to 50 employees that they were talking about. So I'm not going to speak on behalf of the county or the city, but just looking at, number one, how to be a business-friendly community, because I guess we are what you would consider to be bedroom, right? We have a great, we are what I would consider to be a bedroom community, right? We have a lot of families, a lot of, you know, we're very close-knit, but at the same time, working with what we have with these people. So the city works on a case-by-case basis when it comes to the incentives that they will offer. And when I'm talking about these, I'm talking about the industrial parks, because that's really what we're trying to focus on right now. We're not working a lot of prospects that are looking at private, although if I get someone that calls me that wants to look at a private piece, I will suggest that. But what we're trying to focus on is what the city has and what the county has, which is 2 industrial parks. Okay? But the city looks at them on a case-by-case basis, and they do offer some incentivation there for those properties. The county has an abatement structure. That's it's a resolution style document, which we are looking at, which came out of that training that we had. So we're going to be looking at that, talking with the county a little bit more. So the city has some incentives, the county has some incentives. And so maybe just working on how OUA wants that to look as an organization. You know, you guys do have the discount there, but you don't know with this business, if you guys want to, I know you have to be fair across the board, but if you kind of want to talk about, you know, do you want to look at it on a case-by-case basis? some leeway to say yes or no.
What they do is they use the exception.
Do what?
They use the exception. In other words, if they need to change something,
Right,
so if I'm one of the board myself,
right.
we'd have an exception to the
Right.
policy. That leaves the door open.
I think another, I'm gonna try to stay on topic, but another really good topic that you guys brought today is communication. So I think partnering with OUA, having this relationship established, we're gonna keep you guys informed. I would say from the beginning, as soon as possible. I'm not gonna waste too much of this time with people until I know that they're committed in a sense that, okay, let's start to these numbers and that sort of thing, but,
But even when you're doing that preliminary work, there is element to keep it away from us from a public knowledge, because we are a public agency and everything is open records. Their initial contracts or contacts, they don't involve public agencies for that reason, because the potential investor doesn't want it out there publicly knowledge. So you kind of have to walk that fine line too, that she can't involve us until you get to that certain element where it can be released to the public, that there is somebody interested in doing it.
and really again, of those 5 to 6 really good prospects that we've worked since I've been here, only one has, had some confidentiality. So we guys can bring you in, even if that's limited size, but I think just keeping these lines of communication open, I'll try to keep you guys as involved as possible right from the beginning, and maybe we can just work through it.
I'd like to share a little story about communication. A few years back, there was a developer coming into Okeechobee, and it was going to be a big project. Everybody was excited. Everything was it was going to change the complexion of Okeechobee. It's in the news. It was in the new Okeechobee news. I was having dinner one night, and the county commissioner came plopping by and sat down with me and says, "Man, this is good." And I said, "Well, it has not come to our board yet, and when it does, we're looking at 18 to 24 months before anything's going to happen with engineering and all that." He just completely lost his color. He said, "I never even thought about it that way." So communication has to be if we're going to put these things together.
I feel like we work well together with this one, so I don't consider.
It's a good start.
This is a segue that you might be able to talk about. They are membership-driven,
Mhm.
and the OUA is not a member.
Mhm.
Maybe it's.
What kind of discounts do you give to us?
Thank you, sir.
We'll discuss that with the board.
Right, yeah. I actually already have this discussion on my next executive committee meeting, but we do have two types of members for our organization. We have appointed members, and then we do have members who, invest to be on the board, so I guess.
But as a member, it's not only, there's some information that might be to us earlier rather than later.
Well, it
Certainly for the planning purposes, if the OUA had a seat at the table, be it me or a board member, whomever, it might be beneficial.
Are you volunteering, John? You got it?
The territory, so I don't learn.
Okay.
But
You
it's,
should be a board
Just
member.
got to put that in my
Yeah, I
little
mean-
memory bank.
Be the chairman and John.
Wait a minute now. We'll talk about it.
it's a good idea to do that, and it's, not only will it help us, but it also helps you to have someone like a Hayford that knows the infrastructure and, oh, well, I've got a 12-inch line over here versus a 6-inch line over there,
Or nothing.
or nothing over there, so, I mean, I think I think you send the administrator over, or John,
I think it was also coming out of the class last week, very positive that you've partnered up with a college for training the workforce, because that's a big concern with me is workforce. But once again, you can't, once they start breaking ground, you can't start training. Your training has to be done prior to that. But it's great that you've opened that door and opened a communication with the college. So we'll be able to. these people that have to leave the area and go find jobs maybe have an opportunity of working at home now.
And, to the discussion we had about, commuters earlier, we actually do, if you look at our statistics, from the standpoint of a 6-mile drive, our workforce goes up, right? So if you're looking in all directions, then our workforce starts to look a little bit enticing. And we do actually have a lot of commuters that work, and I can get you some of those numbers if you want. Because once you start opening it up, you're just looking at the city and the county, then, that's one discussion. But when you open it up and look at, our commuters, then we start to get a little bit more competitive from that standpoint. But
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, with
Let's go with a
Blades
prime
below us
example.
and Henry beside us, I mean, you know,
correct.
I mean, we are, I mean, I don't mean to be ugly, but we're a lot nicer community than some of our surrounding neighbors. A lot nicer, even with the junkyards we have in places, but, you know, we still are a lot nicer community.
I agree.
I commuted for 3 years. I know the feeling. I saw everybody that was going this way in the morning and this way in the afternoon.
I commute, but it's usually 800 or 900 miles.
I'd like to make a comment. I do mortgage closings. And this year, part of last year and this year, I've seen more purchases coming into Okeechobee where people that work in southern Palm Beach County, Broward County. And I'll say, are you going to commute or are you going to change? No, we're going to commute. So we do have, I mean, it's not a big number that I've seen, but several.
It would be more if we had capacity. We don't have any homes.
Yeah.
All those Palm Beach dollars are welcome to come out here.
You know, a buddy of mine put his house on the market the other day for 300,000, sold it the next day at 315.
I think this is a significant, discussion that needs to be had, probably from a community angle, not just from our aspect. But, if this is an issue that your organization feels like is important, maybe it's a good time to start discussion on what it looks like for the future. Does anybody else have any questions or shares?
Remember, thank you for being here.
No, just thank you.
Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for letting me come.
Yeah, depends on what the base rate for the membership is to see what hers is gonna be, yeah.
There could be an appointment position, so that's what needs to be discussed, where the OUA would not have to pay anything. So,
They should, we should, I mean,
well, we'll see.
we're all part of a team.
Yes.
What you need to think about too is in what role.
Somebody's
you want to be in.
vibrating.
Do you want a board, do you want to be involved at a board level, like what John was discussing? Or, do you want to be a member of more of like a committee role? At what level
Right.
is conducive to the schedule? So,
He's flexible.
Well, that's one thing we'll agenda and we'll discuss, see what level we'll put it at.
But and I also think a little bit depending upon how you want us to interact with DC as to where you plug us in. So,
I'd like you, I won't speak on behalf of everyone, but I know just based on what I've heard is we would like as much engagement from all of our community partners as possible, because as this discussion, we keep coming back to the same concept, which is we are not going to be able to do this on our own. The EDC cannot do it on our own. OUA can't do it on its own. The city can't do it on its own. The county, it's at a point where we just need all hands on deck, in my opinion.
And it's gotta be a commitment to stay there.
Correct.
The follow-through in our community, just like a lot of businesses I've worked at, the follow-through seems to fall off as you get further away. We just need that drive to keep it going.
Ray, did you pick up anything else useful? Okay. Gotcha. All right, everybody happy with this? Ready to move forward? Okay, we're going to move to agenda item number 17, 14 in our board package. The surface water treatment plant, 3 million gallon storage tank. John?
happy to announce the project is complete. I don't know if anybody's driven by there, but the new tank and pumps and tie-in are functional. The older tanks are gone. There's basically a retention pond in their absence. So here we are to close out the project contractually, paperwork-wise. So what you have in your board package is a contract modification number 2, which deals with primarily fees that are due, OUA. And then the second portion is the final pay application number 23. So I'll walk you through the change order number 2, which primarily takes away the remaining monies in the contract, $18,494.10, which are basically monies that have been left over from unsuitable material they didn't have to remove, or suitable material they had to bring in, or floor leveling, certain things within the contract that are left unpaid, unearned by the contractor. And then out of their retainage is the fee, $58,800, which represents the additional engineering expenses that the OUA has incurred because of their overage in time, so that the OUA is not left holding the proverbial financial bag for those engineering fees for the contract extension that we should have to pay. So they agreed to pay those fees when they got their other contract modification number 1, which gave them more time. So $58,800 would come out of their retainage that is owed to them, totaling a credit of $77,294.10, which shows as a reduction in their contract price, which then we can build into pay request number 23.
Is this the final pay request?
Final pay request is number 23, which is the net $228,123.64, which is the bulk retainage that they're due from the project.
What we need
Minus?
to do is approve the contract modification number 2,
Yes, sir.
and then approve payment of the application number 3.
And minus, we held retainage with each pay.
Right.
This basically represents the remaining money out of that retainage that we owe them.
Okay, so, but that $77,000 credit was applied to this?
Well, they used to have $200,000 worth of retainage. Now they only get $128,000.
Okay.
So we basically keep that money in our bank account, if you will. The
Separately?
contract has been reduced by
Separately?
$77,000.
Okay.
Make a motion to accept the approval of contract modification number 2.
Second.
Motion by Steve Nelson, second by Tom Clay. Further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is payment for application number 23.
Make the motion of the approval of payment application number 23 in the amount of $228,123.64.
Motion, Mr. Nelson.
Second.
Second, Mr. Clay. Further discussion? Being none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Now, all of that's this final payment. Sorry, I needed to make sure this is clarified. There is going to be, like, their release, there's some paperwork, release from liens, surety bond, that kind of stuff will trade paperwork to actually make this final payment. They get a check, we get the paperwork.
Well, looks nice over there now.
Well, it's a long time coming. It's way overdue.
Man, that other one was from the 20s. We ought to,
Long time overdue.
You know, it was surprising. I thought it was going to take them a lot longer, but they brought in some fairly big pieces of equipment that had all the right tools on them, and they made quick work of those 2 tanks. Quick work.
yeah, when you bring in an excavator with that,
They had the ones with the
Piston on the
big
end.
pinching jaws, and they had one, they had the right equipment, right people.
What R.J. Sullivan does for a living.
Well, they were subs, but they brought in the right equipment, so it worked out well.
I worked with them 25 years ago. All right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 18, 15 in our package, the window replacement.
Chair and board members, the admin building at the water plant, 2-story structure, It is a part of some of the original equipment that's on site. The windows have been leaking for some time, and the upstairs windows out of the water end that runs down the wall into the lower floors, creating some maintenance issues there. They went out and tried to get several quotes for window replacement because they tried the caulking. They've had a roof contractor look at the roof to make sure it wasn't the roofing issue, and they were able to get this quote from On It here in town, a contractor here in town, to the tune of $15,910 for the window replacement.
It's a metal building, isn't it?
No, sir.
It is concrete? You'd think they'd get that one sealed up. So this is what staff recommends?
I would recommend the replacement of those windows, yes, sir.
Board's pleasure.
Make a motion that we go with staff recommendations, approval of the on-net proposal, $15,910.
Motion by Mr. Clay. Second.
Who's the second? Sorry, Steve? Okay.
Mr. Nelson, I'm sorry, I was writing a note. Any further discussion? Being none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Agenda item number 19, water main installation. John?
Mr. Chairman, board members, there are two small water main requests, basically driven by customer request initially to try to provide water service to them. When we get these requests, we also try to look at it as far as how can we best improve the infrastructure as a whole, as well as to provide other customers. We have done them in small cases where it's 100 or 200 feet of pipe to bring one person on board. That's okay, but when we get to this one at the Brenda Band, it does loop the system and would make water available to more customers and are requesting it. Certainly, southwest section, you can see where we're doing these extensions to pick up the 2 or 3 customers requesting the service, but it also eliminates several dead ends in the system. So out of our annual budget where we allocate monies towards water main installation, we are requesting that the board approve these expenditures for both the Brenda Band. It's going to be in the range of just under $40,000, and the southwest section to just under $28,000. All told, it still falls within the budgetary threshold of $150,000 that we have allocated for water main installation this year.
There's 18 or 19 homes on
Just
that.
for my information, how many people have signed up that they're willing to go?
In the Brenda Band, I believe it's 2 or 3, and the same for the southwest section. There's 2 or 3 new houses going in.
But it does take that deadhead out and loops the system, and
Yes, sir.
so there's benefit to us to it too.
Well, what we end up with in Brenda Band is a prime example. If you look at the line on Southeast 44th Avenue, in the 20 years I've been here, it's been extended 3 times. 1 house or 2 houses, and you just don't like to build your piping system that way where you build it in segments. And so this will eliminate some of that if we just do the whole road. It eliminates the dead end. It provides some redundancy to the system. Now we can connect up anybody that requested that's on say 38th Street or 44th Terrace.
And we put a fire hydrant back there.
No, this is going to be it's only a 4-inch line coming in, but we do intend to put a specialized one at the end. We've been putting these in Taylor Creek aisles rather than having the 2 hose nozzles on the ears and a big pumper nozzle. We just put a smaller hydrant that has the hose connections so they can't connect the pumper truck up to it and collapse our pipe.
Okay.
So it does provide some localized fire protection, but it's on a limited basis.
Now, John, this gets us through the Treasure Island pretty much, doesn't it? Or is that front piece, that next piece over as far as
Most of
water?
Treasure Island is Brenda Bend was just added on, and it wasn't done in its entirety, but most of Treasure Island, it's either gonna be, you know, some of it was private development, like Vantage Oaks area, the mobile home park.
Right.
But most of Treasure Island does have water now.
Looking at the overheads that you've put here, like Brenda Band's County and the 13th Avenue City,
I believe that is correct.
both of those have LDRs for mandatory hookup?
They can be included in that, yes,
Would
sir.
that be, because there's water main in front of their house now, would they be imposed?
We can turn that over to the city and county and see what they want to do with it. Yes, sir.
Put it in our memory bank for 2 weeks. Thank you.
Yeah, because we got stuff in the city that's hooked up.
True.
I'll make a motion to approve the two projects that were in the Southwest 13th Avenue as presented.
Motion, Ms. Trent,
Second.
second, Mr. Nelson, further discussion? Being none, all in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Good. Growing the system. Agenda item number 20, federal lobbying.
Chairman and board members, there was some request as far as to go back and look at our previous lobbyist, Mr. Jim Davenport, who was originally with Alcalde and Fay, and then they moved over to Thorn Run Partners, and we've used him in the past for a number of months when we were extensively looking at Treasure Island and trying to get on board with the WRDA documentation. Now with the change in at the federal level that they used to be called earmarks, but now they're called member projects or something of that nature, all a part of this new infrastructure bill. The question was asked, should we entertain thought of acquiring federal lobbyist help to kind of help us through that process to see if some of our senators Rubio and or Representative Stubbe are going to be pursuing that through their respective Senate or House bill. There is attached to this Mr. Davenport's proposal at $3,500 a month. There is a 30-day cancellation policy in there. Should we elect to go forward with this for, say, some period, 12 months, 6 months, and reevaluate where we are with the federal lobbying. But I just wanted to bring this to the board to see what your thoughts, pleasures, if that would be of any benefit to the OUA.
One question that I would like to ask of him is what other communities is he representing? Make sure that we're competing for the same.
He has a long list. I don't know that it's in here. But I think he has a pretty long list of other communities that he does represent. Yes, it's on like page 5.
Other states, Palm Beach,
Both California and Florida.
Oregon, Kansas.
I think you take a run at it, at least try it.
And this is pretty much the same dollar amount that we used last time.
Yes, ma'am.
Do it for a year and see what he does.
Absolutely.
Just keep remember over the last several months or several years, us complaining about this fee and getting nothing out of it. And I don't think it's going to change.
Well,
Well, it's a different group running Washington now.
Yeah,
and
that's-
Totally different.
it may be different.
Owen,
I can tell you that
me and you hate that.
I can tell you that even when they were not on our contract, they still sent us information on a regular basis, letting us know about pending legislation and bills that could benefit or harm the OUA. So I know they stayed up with it. We stayed in contact with them. We just haven't been under contract with them until this proposal was served today. And I think it would be
I just
worth it.
remember bad taste in our mouths as board members for a few years because we didn't think we were getting more bang.
But it was a bad taste. I'm not so sure that it was because of the lobbyist. It was more so that the way we were treated
Money was locked.
when we were trying to get on board with the word and the way the Corps of Engineers treated us. it was a lot of money we spent and got not a lot to return, but I don't think it was, well, I'm not so sure it was the fault of the lobbyists. It's more of the agenda within Washington.
It's 40
It's a shame.
grand. Basically, it's 3,300 a month, right? No,
35, yes, sir.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's $40,000 trial and error. I mean, I think we'd look at it for,
6 months?
I'd say a year.
I think you gotta give him a process to go through. I think, that's just my opinion, that you'd have to give him a year to,
And what would be the effective date, John? Because I noticed on the contract it has March 2021.
The effective date would be when we signed it and go forward from there.
I was just noticing that in this paperwork.
The savings grade in this is the 3-day cancellation.
Right.
I think the other one, an annual contract.
the other one was a contract we had to wait till the end of. But this one, we got an out,
That's correct. That's my feeling about it.
yeah. So we're not signing a year's contract with him, all we're doing is putting him back to work.
No, we are, but we got a 30-day
Yeah, well, you still got a 30 days, so it's really doesn't, when you got a 30-day out, it's the contract's meaningless.
30-day contract.
Yeah.
I'm willing to try anything, even though it gives me heartburn.
I know, I did, I mean, I was one of the loudest ones against it,
But the money's there, folks.
but let's see if he can do anything.
Board's pleasure.
I make the recommendation that we engage
Four-run partners?
4-run partners for a period of a year with 30-day cancellation contract.
Motion by Mr. Nelson.
I'll second.
Ms. Anderson. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That was hard, wasn't it? It was hard to get up.
It's unanimous. Motion carries.
5-0.
Jim Davenport is going to be the one heading.
You will be our point of contact. Yes, sir.
You have him contact me?
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 21, Lakeview Estates Cabinet Proposal.
Mr. Chair, board members, there is an ongoing project, One Water, which you all are aware of at the Lakeview Estates wastewater treatment plant, where they're going to refurbish one of the 2 drain fields that we have, as well as put in a new treatment system. But we still will be using some of the older plant, like the pump station, and some of the filters and the digester. The current electrical panels that are out there are very, very old, have been rewired numerous times by different operators. They're a mess. The contractor has given us a quote in their other electrical work and other panels that they're bringing in. They have provided us an exorbitant fee of $35,460 to replace those panels and provide the labor so that they will be as new as all the other equipment out there. Personal opinion, I believe it's a little bit high, but it is a contractor that's out there working, and it will dovetail in with all of their other work. Sometimes you have to recognize that as opposed to try and go in and do that after the fact. So you see the proposal here for them for the products and labor. It's to the tune of $35,460.
So this expense will be our expense, not out of the One Water grant
Correct.
we have.
Because it's on our old treatment plant. It's not any of their new equipment.
John, what do you feel would be a reasonable charge?
I thought the cat prices were very, very good. I just thought the labor was a tad high, and where you might see that is, let's say, for instance, the control panel labor was at $59.85. They added a 25% markup fee, raising it to $7,400. That's typical within the industry in the way you have this, but it's not out of the norm. It's just a little bit higher than what I would have liked. But continuity there is that it's not our contractor going in and trying to work with another contractor, which can cause conflict. It's all the same contractor, and at the end of the job, when we put the key in the ignition and turn it, it's all supposed to work.
Okay.
As long as they don't throw any change orders on us after we approve the 25%. above contract.
Yes, sir, correct.
That's where I have heartburn again, more heartburn today. Okay,
I make a motion that we move forward as staff recommends to replace the panels by $35,460 by Kane Enterprises, doing business as Engineering Solutions International.
motion by Mr. Clay,
I'll second.
second Ms. Anderson. Further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, public comment. We have anybody from the public that would like to speak?
She did.
She did. Think of anything else?
I would like to say one other thing, if you don't mind, I'll keep it really brief, but, I know we talked about a lot of subjects today, but I think this is worth just one further clarification. Our role as an EDC is not, in the realm of these discussions, is not that we do not think that OUA should be a profitable organization. We don't want to eliminate how you are paying off your debts. That's not the basis for these discussions. I think rather, the same discussion we're having, across the community is now that we are seeing prospective businesses come to our area, and given the fact that we do know that we have significant challenges, if we do have a member of the existing business community that wants to expand, or if we get an opportunity with a business that we feel represents Okeechobee, right, like we feel that this is a business that wants to come here that's the right fit, we just want to be able to offer them some kind of an incentive or show that we have a partnership as a community that would get them to choose us maybe over Sebring or over other areas. So that really is the topic of this discussion. It's not that we don't, so I just wanted to clarify that. We don't want OUA to get in any kind of financial crisis situation. Just, if we get a good opportunity, we want to go with it.
Thank you. Items from the attorney.
John resolved the problem for us, and I'll let him speak to it. Other than that, I don't have anything new to.
Okay.
Nobody's suing us. We're not being sued.
Not today, anyway.
That just amazes me.
Mr. Hayford.
One order of business in front of your placement is a proposal from Anderson Andre Consulting Engineers. They are going to be providing the in-place density testing for the Oak Lake Estates project. This was delivered Friday. That project work has started on the drainage on Wolf Road. This proposal is for the tune $41,929, of which $26,922 will be paid by the county. Our expense for our piping is $15,007 for the in-place density testing. So the OUA, as a part of the interlocal agreement, will pay all the fees and then seek reimbursement from the county for the drainage element. So I would recommend to the board that they approve this proposal from Anderson Andre Consulting Engineers in the amount of $41,920 to provide the in-place testing service for the Oak Lake Estates project.
So said.
Has the proposal gone to the county yet?
Yes, sir.
It has, and they're approved, they're okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, Tom. Motion by Tom
Second.
Clay. Nelson, I'm writing initials. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Go ahead, John.
Okay, in your board package, there's several things. I've listed them. I'll be happy to talk to any one of those. The highlights I would like to point out is that McVicker Consulting is on board to provide us as our eyes, ears, and whatever else at these meetings with the Army Corps of Engineers concerning the Lake Okeechobee System Operating Manual. We had to enter into an agreement with them. The Army Corps required them to have that agreement that they could speak on our behalf at these multitude of meetings, Zoom meetings, Microsoft Teams. So McVicker is on board. Recently signed the same type of consulting agreement with both Okeechobee County and the city of Okeechobee. Mentioned that Tom was talking about, we had tried to recover some wastewater connection fees owed to us by the Gadsden Family Partnership, Pine Ridge Park. They were declining to pay because they were the owner of the utility system that they abandoned in Pine Ridge Park, causing us to take over. In the agreement, the only thing that I see in the agreement that we were going to give them were water connections. It specifically said that would pay the wastewater connection fees, and they had not been in payment, so we engaged Bosell and Berg, which you saw a couple of their invoices for representing the OUA, and bottom line, between a few letters being written back and forth and phone calls, the family did come in and sign a payment agreement, so they are on their way towards paying us the $32,000 for connection fee for Pine Ridge Park. It's all been resolved. No more letters, phone calls, legal action are going to be required.
Nice job.
So it worked out well. I was working on this administration vehicle. Hopefully I have that to you by next month.
What's the holdup?
Ain't nobody got any vehicles.
Well,
It didn't take any time to get a Chevy proposal. Why aren't we getting a Ford proposal?
the Chevy Patrol was very long in coming. It took a lot of emails. I think it just, like they were mentioning, the product that said, what do you have? What can you get us? They're hard to come by.
Amazing. I went and bought a truck the other day and walked in and walked out the same day. How about that?
Well, they must have had it, but I'm just saying it's one of those deals. We are working on it. We're trying to get local interest, and as soon as we do, we'll bring it back.
They got used vehicles turned sideways on the front of the lot. They had nothing. They had one diesel, I think.
They shipped them out. I was in there the other day, and 6 or 8 that were there, they'd already sold upstate.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it was crazy.
I understand the roundabout's gonna be done by the 18th of this month.
Hey,
Rumor has it. I know you're guarding our pipes every night out there, aren't you?
yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing.
You're gonna get a break here pretty soon, I hear. It's,
Really, gonna be? I can't be done that quick.
I heard the 18th.
Yeah, but which year?
I was down through there, not this weekend, but the weekend before, and they were still putting shell down.
So I have a couple things I'd like to share with you. Some of them courtesy of EDC. You asked about this earlier, and I need to plug something in. Let's see if this works. It hadn't all gone to sleep on us. There we go. So let's watch a couple.
Very nice.
Makes me want to open a business in Okeechobee.
Makes me want to go over this city pond and go fishing.
Now that our well feels safe, we. All right, any further business?
I'm
We're
not quite done.
Come on, now, this has been a long meeting today.
You can't always plan when you'll need a gun. Rational gun owners carry not because it's a weapon, but because it's
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I thought
The future is here on the Florida Heartland Frontier.
Part of being an Okeechobee
Time to start your
resident,
journey
you carry
in
the-
Okeechobee County. Here, in the center of it all, on the north shore of massive Lake Okeechobee, free your operation from high costs and heavy congestion while expanding your reach with close proximity to global and domestic ports, in-county CSX, Amtrak, major highways, and commercial air connections. Put markets close. 75% of Florida's 20.7 million population is within a 2-hour drive. And complete your location deal rapidly in a pro-business community, offering superb site selection with abundant and affordable acreage that includes 2 powerfully resourced industrial parks. In the county that's home to Florida's Power and Light's signature clean energy center, the future is always brighter, combining picture-perfect landscapes on the Lake Okeechobee Scenic Trail with a profit picture equally beautiful, thanks to operating costs 12% below metro areas and lucrative incentives like tax abatements, utility discounts, training funds, no impact fees, and more. Beef up your bottom line in a location that breeds proven success across sectors. From the 3,000 head of prime commercial Brangus cattle of Williamson Farms, to the more than 30 years of innovation of Integra concrete roof tiles, manufactured with one of the world's most advanced tile making and coloring systems, to the nonstop transport performance of Walpole, rated number 5 in the nation, operating all across North America and Mexico. Whatever the mission, your global brand of quality is assured through a workforce steeped in a solid agricultural work ethic, with skills honed by world-class collaborative training provided through Indian River State College. A high-powered business location with an inviting family environment, top-rated school system, and 4-year college, Okeechobee offers a uniquely compelling opportunity, combining cutting-edge innovation with small-town values. So break free and leave high costs and traffic congestion behind. The future is here on the Florida Heartland Frontier in Okeechobee County. Let's talk today.
I was part of that top 5 management team at Walpole Inc.
So, last, what I'd like to leave with you, and again, that was certainly through the EDC, and you could certainly give you more about that. But the other thing, and I'll be real quick, I can run through this presentation fairly quickly if I know how to.
It's gonna have to be pretty quick or we're gonna have to take a break.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing.
It'll be quick. If
Keeping
you
it
want, I can
close.
send this to you, but essentially, this is the type of deal we talked about, a presentation to the Board of County Commissioners concerning the mandatory connection.
Yes.
This project is gonna be going through all of the different projects here, what they are, what the cost is, and essentially, when we look through Okatani as well as the Safe Water, we're gonna come down to this last slide, which basically says, your LDRs mandate that they are connected, that customers, residents connect. We can't go forward with spending state money, OUA money, to provide these connections to the 500 plus in the southwest, as well as the State Road 78 corridor, if the county isn't gonna do their part to enforce the connection, because we don't have a building department, we don't have code enforcement. It actually will require the county to step in and make these mandatory connections happen.
Which board meeting is this being presented at?
The 29th, I think, is the next board meeting.
Some of us that could be there as well in support of this presentation.
We have sunshine issues we have to worry about.
Okay.
Well, I don't know, the sunshine, we'll leave that to the chairman and and them to, but they could advertise it as such. But the deal is, they need to have that on a one-on-one basis. You're more than welcome to call any county commissioner on a one-on-one basis and give them your viewpoints. But without the county providing the mandatory connection, we can put the infrastructure in, it's our cost, but if we don't have the customers, we gotta bear that burden for a long time.
And they kicked this ball down the road far enough.
Again, like the things, they kicked us to that area.
No, I mean, everybody says, yeah, we gotta do that, then they run and hide.
So
And it's time to be done.
that's what this presentation that either John or I will be given to the BOCC, and we're gonna ultimately end up, your land development regulations say thou shalt connect, you guys gotta enforce it.
John, what is the maintenance headache? Let's say if we put in a 12-inch pipe and we don't have the capacity and the flow to go in. I know from my experience in wastewater, it turns into concrete if it's not flowing.
Well,
What type of headache would that be?
You end up with a lot of things, but on the design basis, you have to know what your flow is, so you size the pipe appropriately. You don't want to go too little, because then you got high velocities, which damage the pipe, and higher pumping costs. And if you make it too big, long detention times, so you have odor issues at the far end, you do have deposition, you might have blockages, it's just not a good design principle.
Right, and
There's a reason for the mandatory hookup. We put it in to supply that whole area, and they don't tie in. So
Well, or you could even go to the argument that the state is providing us these grants, knowing that we're gonna eliminate septic tanks, and if we don't eliminate septic tanks, they give us money.
shame on you.
Right. So, then we will be pushing that, you might hear noise, but that's what we're gonna be doing, going to the board and saying, you have a mandatory policy, you need to enforce it.
There's something that the Economic Development Group needs to be involved in right there.
Yeah, will you share the presentation with us, John?
Believe it or not, the LDRs and everything are in place. It's just enforcement we have. That is correct.
Will you share that
Everything's in
presentation
place.
with us?
So,
Can you share your presentation with us? Can you email it to us?
to the board members? Happy to.
Any items from the board?
Go to the bathroom.
Got to go to the bathroom, so we're going to do this quick. Thank you, everybody, for coming. See you next month. Meeting adjourned. Pew! Better be a two-holder.
Do not get in his way.